Jerome Corsi. What a time, Doc, to be alive and to be seeing all this unfold. First off, and we'll hold you in the next hour if you can, because we got a lot of angles to cover here. What do you make of the Comey testimony surfacing and the fact that this has been hiding in plain view for the last week with really nobody else pointing it out?
Well, I think Comey has a serious problem in that he's made it clear in testimony under oath to Congress that there was no interference politically in his investigation. And clearly the investigation has continued. So there's no effort and there's going to be no documentation that President Trump did anything to really stop the investigation. I mean, I can show you things that Richard Nixon did to stop various actions of Congress, et cetera. This is dramatically different. And the conversation that President Trump had with Comey in the White House, first of all, we only have one side of that conversation recorded. And President Trump only said, please, is there any way you can let up on? That's very different from, I'm ordering you to stop the investigation. That order was not.
Well, plus he said, if you believe the memo, see your way. Your way means your investigation. See it your way, where it's in the right. I don't think he's done anything wrong. He's a great guy. Yeah, he's a great guy. But even if that memo's real, they've let the media put out that this is some type of obstruction of justice, so they're guilty of slandering and defaming the president and allowing a lie to be put out based on his memo when he's perjured himself saying that he doesn't believe that's what it is. So either way you slice it, it's defamation, it's sedition, it's disinformation campaigns against the president with the colluding media, or he's perjured himself. Which is it?
Well, and I think you're right. And what I'm pointing out in this article is that, and how to compete against this disinformation campaign, because the entire Russian collusion is classic disinformation. It's a lie. There's no basis for it, and there's no evidence.
Here's an example. I was watching a Newsweek clips this morning on YouTube, and I was watching Washington Post video clips, and they're all saying even Sessions got caught working with the Russians and tried to cover it up, so he had to recuse himself. He never got caught. He never did anything wrong. So they're just lying on every front.
Well, that's the whole purpose of the mem. It's designed to continue its life, even against news and proof that there's no evidence. Now, the first article that I wrote made the point that you do not beat a propaganda campaign, this kind of misinformation, by truth. In other words, proof that there's no evidence is not going to stop the Democrats from saying, oh, but we might find evidence. We're going to investigate, keeping it alive. Now, by appointing a special counselor, different than special prosecutor, limited powers, special counsel, is that all these questions now have to be referred into the Justice Department.
So that's more fake news when the media kept calling it a special prosecutor.
It's not a special prosecutor. It's a special counselor. A very different distinction. Mueller's authorities do not include prosecution.
It's advisory.
It includes investigation only. He's there to counsel the Department of Justice as to what he finds, and he might be able to call a grand jury, but that's different from prosecuting. If it's going to be prosecuted, that's up to the Department of Justice, not up to Mueller. Now, Mueller, in doing this, this puts the issue, the propaganda issue, is now in a proper jurisdiction where truth does matter. And Mueller is going to be able to distinguish between conversations that were held in the normal course of business and collusion. Collusion is going to be very hard to prove.
Sure, because they spent it. I mean, take Sessions. He met in the year before during the campaign, but not as a part of the campaign, with the Russian ambassador to the United States. Totally normal. Pelosi met 30-plus times the same year. Said she didn't, but got caught on her own records and on video doing it. But that's normal. And, of course, Sessions went, I didn't lie. Of course, I met with him on the Intelligence Committee, but I didn't, or the Armed Services Committee, but I didn't meet with him on the campaign trail in that capacity. It's a different hat. But then the media plays games with that. Mueller will be tied to what the law is and the legal specifics, not just this overblown MSM lie.
Yeah, because, see, now the innuendo, which in the court of public opinion would have kept the propaganda memo alive, to Mueller is going to be inconsequential, because Mueller will distinguish based upon law that in the order course of business, Nancy Pelosi, many others met with the Russian ambassador. It's no crime to meet with the Russian ambassador. But the crime here would have to constitute some very strict standards of proof. In other words, that there was a plan that was perpetrated to somehow or other
influence the government for money or other goods. Yeah, you'd have to be selling the country out somehow, not meeting with the Russian ambassador. That doesn't mean anything.
With the goal of throwing the election to Donald Trump away from Hillary Clinton. Now, first of all, even if the emails are out there, there's no proof that the emails affected anybody's vote. So that's a big problem in proving collusion legally. Number two, you've got the issue that it looks like this Rich Seth, the DNC operative that was killed, was the one who released the emails.
We're going to come back and talk about that more, and the Democrats wanting to openly ban InfoWars. Stay with us. Defeating deep state, mainstream media planning coup d'etat, counterintelligence step one, change the subject. What's amazing is the Democrats and others admit they're lying and trying to overthrow Trump. They know this is targeting dumbed down people. So how do we get around that? The truth doesn't seem to work against it. So what do we do, Dr. Corsi?
Well, this is the point. I'm laying out a strategy, which, is a technical counterintelligence strategy as to how you beat a propaganda campaign that's aimed at you, propaganda campaign aimed at Trump on Russian collusion. And I'm saying the first thing is you can't beat it with facts. By proving that there's no evidence doesn't stop the propaganda campaign. Now, changing the subject does. And the first step, appointing a special counselor who has to get to the next step to become a prosecutor, still has to establish even that a crime was committed. And I sent you the authorizing jurisdiction. He can look at even any matters that arise from the investigation, like maybe it was others who were actually colluding with the Russians, including Hillary Clinton and Podesta. But this changes the subject because now any new information.
Oh, that's the headline. Now I get what you were trying to tell me last night and this morning. I was being dense. Mueller can investigate anybody, and this is actually what Trump's been wanting, so maybe Trump shouldn't get so upset because now they really are in bed with the Russians.
Well, see, the point is that the way this is written, if you look at it very carefully, it says, first of all, that they're going to investigate the Russian government and individuals associated with the campaign of President Trump. And number two, any matters that arose or may arise directly from the investigation, such as that it was Hillary Clinton and Podesta that were coordinating. And these are the kinds of issues, or that it was Seth Rich, the guy who was killed, the DNC, who may have handed over the 44,000 emails to Podesta. All that under point two is within the subject matter of what the special counselor, or look at the top, it's special counselor. It's not special prosecutor. It says in C, a special counselor believes it's necessary and appropriate. He may then proceed to prosecute, but the authority to prosecute is not yet given because there's no establishment yet of a crime. Now, President Trump may feel this was written against him and should have also included Hillary and Podesta and the others, but what it does is it changes the subject, because now any new evidence that comes up, all the White House has to say is it's under investigation. We're going to let that proceed with the special counselor. This is going to take a long time. It's not going to be done in a week. And it diverts the entire advance of the propaganda meme in the sphere of the mainstream media.
Sure. So then why is Trump upset about it?
Well, Trump probably doesn't like the fact there's a special counselor mentioning him by name in point one, and he probably hasn't thought it all the way through yet. But in fact, it's a very, very sophisticated move to stop the Democrats from developing this story every day in their partner, the mainstream media. That's now blocked.
All right, let me ask you about the rumors that this could be a deep state move to destabilize Trump, make him resign, and then put Pence in, who they've been keeping, out of the whole Russia thing since day one. Let me ask you about that straight ahead.
And we've got to get to these other steps that he can take, because it's very important.
All right, and we'll get to those, and then we'll also hit the FCC demonstration today, where they called for InfoWars to be banned with signs. Here's Chucky Schumer.
The topic of Mr. Comey. If the president has tapes of his conversation with Mr. Comey, we ought to be able to review those tapes as well to see if the president pressured the FBI director to shut down an active investigation. The Times reported that Mr. Comey kept contemporaneous memos of his conversations with the president. And Mr. Comey has a reputation for accuracy in those memos.
So if the Attorney General or senior officials at the Department of Justice opposes a specific investigation, can they halt that FBI investigation?
In theory, yes.
Has it happened?
Not in my experience, because it would be a big deal to tell the FBI to stop doing something that without an appropriate purpose. I mean, oftentimes they give us opinions that we don't see a case there, and so you ought to stop investing resources in it. But I'm talking about a situation where we were told to stop something for a political reason. That would be a very big deal. It's not happened in my experience.
You take on the intelligence community, they have 6 ways from Sunday at getting back at you. So even for a practical, supposedly hard-nosed businessman, he's being really dumb to do this.
What do you think the intelligence community would do if they were motivated?
I don't know, but from what I'm told, they are very upset with how he has treated them and talked about them. And we need the intelligence community. We don't know what's going on. Look at the Russian hacking. Without the intelligence community, we wouldn't have discovered it.
Oh, no, we wouldn't have discovered the foreign outside enemy force overtaking the country like globalism, right, Schumer? So notice you got Schumer 2 days ago saying, thank goodness for Comey. He's the best guy. He's so known to be so accurate in these memos. When Schumer said he's horrible, he should be fired over and over again just a few months ago, and Hillary just 2 weeks ago. But now, oh, Comey's their best friend ever, and, you know, we need these tapes. And then we play you a tape from May 3rd of Comey saying never happened, didn't happen, 2 months after the supposed memo. You could not discredit Schumer more. Then we cut to a clip of Schumer with President-elect Trump saying, watch out, the intelligence community has a way to bring you down. Clapper said, shut your mouth. Brennan said, shut your mouth. I mean, the arrogance of these people is incredible. Dr. Corsi, finishing up with your article on Infowars.com. Defeating the deep state, the battle plan, mainstream media plan coup d'etat, counterintelligence, step 1, change the subject now with a special counsel who can also investigate the Democrats. Step 2, what else?
Well, if you just take a look, I mean, this is how you basically get this Russian collusion mem to recede into the background. Just truth isn't going to do it. Let's take for an example, let's say that it develops that it's justified and necessary to have a war with North Korea, that we have to attack North Korea. Now, I'm not recommending that we do attack North Korea, and I'm saying as an example only, let's assume it comes to the point where it's absolutely necessary to attack North Korea to reduce their nuclear capacity. The minute that happens, the news cycle is going to get 100% taken by the North Korean attack. And the mem on Russian collusion disappears immediately. There's no oxygen for it. That's an example of changing the subject. Next week, President Trump's going to go on this overseas trip. Saudi Arabia, the Vatican. He's going to end up in Israel. Going to go to Belgium for a NATO's meeting. He's going to be in Italy with the G7. He's got plenty of opportunity to change the subject, to force the mainstream media to cover the news he's creating in foreign policy. And the Russian collusion mem now goes in the background because we can say, wait a minute, well, that's all Mueller. We can't talk about it anyway. It's under investigation. It's all going to be referred into Mueller. And by the way, anybody who leaks anything like these notes from Comey or anything else is now committing a crime violating the special counsel and violating the potential he might create a grand jury. So, you know, you've got a new crime created for any more leaks. All the conversation of the Russian collusion has to go in the background.
Sure.
Because it's now been referred to the...
Is that an accurate statement I've seen from MSM that Mueller's known for going after leakers? Because these are the known crimes being committed, and they're using the supposed leak to make stuff up. They're using the national security dome as a way to actually manufacture frauds that can't be pierced because they hide behind that wall. And I think this is a great example of this memo that's come out that they won't even show us, that in the time frame of 2 months after, the FBI director at the time contradicts himself. I mean, what do you think's really going on here?
Well, first of all, the point I'm trying to make is that the power of the presidency is so great and so extensive that the president can change the subject anytime the president wants to. In the Clinton administration, it was the Wag the Dog movie, if you remember.
Sure, blowing up aspirin factories, you name it, the thing what Trump did with the missile strikes in Syria.
But I'm saying if it's done legitimately, not as a wag the dog. I'm not advocating a wag the dog.
I understand.
But if it comes out legitimately that we have to take action militarily in North Korea, immediately 100% of the news cycle gravitates to that subject. And the Russian mem is pushed to the background.
And we're not calling for that. The point is, those are the type of things that could come to the fore. What are other current crises that are going on that the president could go after and legitimately distract from this giant anti-American lie that is publicly designed to bring down the country into globalism?
Well, let's say the president goes into Israel and comes out of Saudi Arabia with an agreement. There's going to be a type of a NATO formed among the cooperating Muslim countries to go after ISIS, and Israel agrees to apply intelligence to it. And there's new potential that there could be a breakthrough in the Middle East, fighting ISIS with a combination of Israel in the background and the Saudis, perhaps the other forces.
Sure, that'll be seen as another giant victory. And of course, the word is that's why they leaked this fake thing that Trump leaked info on Israel about the bombs and laptops when it was in the news 3 months ago, was again to try to spin the narrative going into Israel because they don't want Trump to be able to make deals and have peace.
But it's going to be the news coming. The president has the ability to generate news that will command the attention of the media. Even the image of Air Force One landing in Saudi Arabia and Israel, landing in Brussels. This is the kind of news that's going to dominate, has to be covered. Going to have to be shown on NBC and CBS and CBS, and will be covered by the mainstream media. And the public not following all the details of these crises are going to see the general image of the president being presidential and creating international policy, which they like. It's the same thing in the domestic era. The president comes back and either signs new executive orders or implements them, reducing crime.
Absolutely. Now, let me shift gears here. What about having the Attorney General do his job and go after the Clintons for Chinagate, which is open and shut? They've been on their payroll, as you know, for almost 30 years. Missile secrets, you name it. What about going after them for the Pedogate and Jeffrey Epstein? What about going after them for all the other crimes they've committed? What about the best defense being a good offense?
All good ideas, all good ideas. But the point is, when you're combating a disinformation campaign, you've got to shift the subject. You can't rearrange the furniture in the room. In other words, to say, well, the Clintons did this or the other people did that. It's pointing fingers around, but you don't shut that dynamic down. You don't shut it down. I mean, this is a psychological technique.
Well, I don't know. I think Hillary getting indicted, I think that'll change the subject real quick. I agree.
It would, but I'm saying, somebody comes into a marriage counselor and says, I think I've got marriage problems. Well, that's now 3 years of marriage counseling, and nothing ends up changing in the marriage, as opposed to somebody saying, I want a divorce. I've got a lawyer. Now everything's changed. I'm trying to find the kinds of techniques that work to change everything immediately.
Sure, let's shift gears, and I'm going to continue to check in with you as articles break. What about this whole other story that's on Infowars.com of the FCC protest, Occupy FCC, run by this George Soros-funded group, with ban Infowars signs, ban Breitbart signs, ban Drudge signs. We'll put that article from Infowars.com up on screen as soon as we can for TV viewers. And then you go to their actual website, they call for us to be banned. We've got members of Congress. That's why they're trying to call me fake news and do all this stuff to try to get us to shut down, is because they want to set the precedent for this. This is crazy. What do you think's going on here?
Well, and by the way, we did this very quickly this morning. Kit put it together, but if you would put my byline on there as well, because I wrote the copy on this. It's a very important article because you've got the protesters out there makes it clear that net neutrality is about censorship. It's about banning Infowars. It's about banning Breitbart. And what my article says in the text of it is that this is the direction it's been going from the beginning.
And there's their sign: stop the hate, regulate. And that's this Soros-funded Occupy FCC group that's going to the house of the head of it and everything else. It's crazy.
Right, or perhaps maybe I wrote an article. I'd like my article to be posted, the one I sent to Kit. I'll send it again because I did a narrative.
No, I understand. Listen, they've been scrambling. We're trying to hire more folks. Kit's doing the job, 8 people. We'll get your article up with the photos as well.
It came in so fast. I'll resend it again.
Yeah, here's your article. Alt-left demonstrators at FCC support Obama-era net neutrality censorship rules with ban Drudge and ban InfoWars and ban Breitbart signs. Yeah, I mean, that's it. Like Soros-funded Democrats want Drudge banned at FCC. I mean, there's the headline. There's your article. I've got it, even though it hasn't been fully posted. I think what happened is Kit was already on it as that was happening, and it's kind of added your stuff in. But we'll post that separately with the photos as well. I'm trying to hire 2 or 3 people to help Kit. He's kind of taken on the job of editor and everything else.
I'm not complaining. What I wrote in there, I think, is very important to be published because
it will be.
It ties it together to explain to people that net neutrality is not about net neutrality. It's a cleverly
That's right. We support net neutrality. Obama called the takeover of the internet last year net neutrality. That's not what it is.
It's not. It only affects.
And the people there protesting from the Democrats have signs saying ban the hate on official website and official signs, and then handmade ones saying ban Drudge, ban InfoWars. This is crazy. All right, Dr. Corsi, thank you so much. They hate us because we'll show you a clip of Comey saying that nobody tried to influence the investigation 2 months after he wrote this memo saying the opposite. We'll expose perjury. We have a memory. By the way, Corsi broke the story about the Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. That's now confirmed again today.